Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. I greet you live from the state of North Carolina, the eighth largest state in the Union, right here in my hometown of Morrisville, North Carolina. On this show, we talk about global affairs, innovation, an increasingly turbulent world politically, economically. And boy, in the United States of America, which we'll be talking about later this week and next week, we have significant turbulence, stormy times in American politics. Yesterday, the House Speaker, for the first time in United States history, Kevin McCarthy, was ousted from his role as Speaker, as Matt Gaetz, the fiery congressman from Florida, moved for his removal, for his willingness to work with Democrats and get a budget passed in the United States Congress, which will keep the government running until November. President Trump, the forebear and leader of his party, was silent on the issue, which I found it interesting, as the president always refers to him as my Kevin. Well, Mr. President, former president, we wonder where your loyalty is now, as Kevin McCarthy is no longer the Speaker, and we have a disruptive Congress, a Congress with no plan in sight on who they're going to elect as the next Speaker, although Patrick McHenry from North Carolina is the interim Speaker. Now, before we bring in our guest, the one thing I will say, I have to leave a little early today, is that I think people are really concerned about the state of American politics. Our country today is being run by a gerontocracy, an 83-year-old president, and a 75-year-old former president. Both are in a statistical dead heat. And now critics are saying that Donald J. Trump does have a chance to become the president again, making him the first president since Grover Cleveland to leave and come back. Now, why would Trump win? Well, the problem is that the political party is completely fractured on both sides. But the fact that Kevin McCarthy was ousted this quickly shows that the right-wing Republicans are really dictating the policies of this country, even though many Democrats and Republicans do want to govern and work together. And they're simply not able to do that. My concern moving forward is that if this continues, what would prevent another one from being ousted and another one from being ousted? And then there's no stability to fund the government. We often forget that people's paychecks are at stake here. Employees are being furloughed. Our ability to research and provide solutions for disease and invest in our infrastructure and support our troops and our veterans and our active soldiers, all of this is at stake if the government gets into a shutdown. We'll be talking about this, but I just want you to think about that as you watch the United States Congress unfold in front of your very eyes. Is this something out of a House of Cards movie with Kevin Spacey and Robin Wright and all of those when we were watching? Well, that really can't happen. What's happening before our eyes? We'll be talking about this show later today and also moving forward. Other things in the world we're going to get to later. We're going to just dive right into our guest. I know that there's different things going on in the world, but anyway, all eyes on former Speaker McCarthy, all eyes on the United States Congress, and of course, 2024, as Joe Biden and Donald Trump are in a statistical dead heat. And my prediction is Donald Trump could be the president again. Now, let's get to work. Of course, and the first president that has been charged and maybe even convicted of crimes. Now, let's bring in our guest, Mark, to start the show off. I'm going to have to leave in a few minutes, but wanted to welcome you here. Mark, this is just I'm going to call Wiley Nickel.
It's wild. It's definitely interesting, and definitely will we get into some of these discussions. I did see earlier an article that is even getting wilder. And like I said, we'll bring in our guest to talk about fiscal literacy, which I know is a topic very important to Nick Palveda, one of our founders and everything. But before I get to that, I was just going to add you how it got a little bit wilder, because apparently Patrick McHenry, who you mentioned earlier, has ordered Nancy Pelosi to vacate her former office because he needs it for his office and all along that. So she's actually over there honoring her longtime friend, Dianne Feinstein, and says that she can't get there to get her belongings, but he actually ordered her to vacate her office because apparently he wants the office. I don't know if the office is in a nice corner of the room, because we know that happens in corporations and other things.
No, and the thing about it is, let's talk about that for a minute. I mean, honestly, I don't know Patrick McHenry. I know one of his right-hand people. Never met him before. But the thing is, okay, Pelosi's husband, Pelosi's best friend, Dianne Feinstein, just died, and she was a stalwart in the Senate. They've known each other for decades and decades. And while this is all going on, that's the first act that Patrick McHenry is going to do is like, I want to move into one of your offices. I mean, this happened in North Carolina where the Speaker of the House moved one of the legislators, Terrence Everett, into the basement or like in a janitor's closet. I mean, it's like, I mean, this is what has just sunk American politics. I mean, how about a call to I just want to make sure everything's okay. Boom. No, I want your office. I mean, I'm hoping that didn't come from McHenry, but certainly it didn't seem to be a really, really, really good thing to do when everybody
No, it wasn't good optics at all and everything. And speaking of good optics and all in that space, and I agree, it was just kind of interesting that happened. But I do know that happens in corporations, both the nonprofits and for-profit corporations, because people want their best view, their best office or whatever, and all along those lines. But I'm going to see if we can get Pepper to come on, because like I said, she does come out of that area of fiscal literacy and all along those lines. And she has definitely been involved in a number of things, even being a veteran, because you mentioned the impact it would have on veterans. And Pepper Bethel is a Navy veteran who is now involved in fiscal literacy and all along those lines. So Pepper, glad that you were able to join us and everything. Like I said, we'll get to some of the other news items as well, but this has just been an interesting day in politics and all along those lines. But Pepper, if you can just share a little bit about yourself, because I do know that you are a Navy veteran involved in now the financial planning lane. And like I said, one of the things that I will ask you in a little bit is one of the reasons this network was founded was because Nick Palveda is of the opinion, along with Kim Calhoun, that we don't talk enough about things that should be talked about, even in our education system. And fiscal literacy is one of those things. Because, like I said, he is a pension attorney, and Kim Calhoun, one of the other founders, is a engineer and an inventor and does other things. So they have had some conversations around fiscal literacy and the need for that. They even did some early stories before we became Pod TV and before this even became an entity around that space and everything. But if you can just share with our audience a little bit about your own background and even how you decided to join the military and became a Navy veteran. And we know that the veterans are important to our life. I actually work with a veterans organization, but if you share a little bit about that.
And Pepper, thank you for your service to our country. I'm the son-in-law of United States Air Force colonels, and want to thank you so much for your service to the Navy.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for having me today. I really appreciate it. So my story is that I come from a family of military and service members. So it was really kind of a foregone conclusion that I would also join in my father and my uncles by joining the military. So it was a long time dream of mine to join the Navy as a little girl. So I went in directly after high school. I did 8 years. I was mostly overseas, but the experience has really shaped me into the person as well as the entrepreneur and business owner that I am today. So I'm so fortunate for the time that I spent, in the Navy. Again, it's definitely part of a brotherhood and a sisterhood that always stays with you. And then right after that, when I was still in college, I worked for a financial planning firm as an assistant to one of the advisors. And that kind of started my career with regard to financial development, financial planning, as well as retirement and business development. So I've been now doing this for 23 years, if you guys can believe that. But for 23 years, I have been pushing an advocate for financial awareness and financial education.
No, it definitely sounds like a great thing. And I know, like I mentioned earlier, that one of the things that it is talked about is the need for fiscal literacy. And one of the things that I know that used to go on is even in our school systems and even in our own families. I remember people that would have allowances and a number of things along those lines. So I was just wondering, because one of the conversations I've been involved with in a number of places is around generational wealth, both in the African-American community as well as other communities as well. So do you think that in the 21st century, in the year 2023, that we are doing enough to teach our kids about their financial planning?
Actually, I think that's a really great question. And no, I do not believe that we're doing enough to show the next generations just how important, financial literacy and education is. I really, again, me and my firm and my partners are championing just that. We're always going out into the community with regard to schools and colleges and letting people know just how important it is to have a financial plan.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and definitely got to have that and everything. And another thing, and Steve kind of alluded to it earlier, but I know a lot of folks, and we actually had a show on the network that was talking about it, I think a day or two ago, was a lot of people don't realize that even with the government shutdown and all in that space, or the averted now government shutdown, that there are a lot of government contracts out there that people can go for, including some of our small businesses and everything. And I think sometimes we don't go for those because we're not aware that we can go for them. So if you can speak to that as well, because I do know that a lot of people are shocked that there are government contracts that they can go out there and get.
Yeah, again, thank you so much for bringing that up too. That is something that I'm also championing for as well. Again, as a veteran, I am super, super excited to be working with a lot of budding entrepreneurs as well as small business owners and partnering with agencies like the Small Business Administration. People do not understand just how important the SBA is to small businesses and to entrepreneurs as well as to veterans. So again, I also work closely with them to try to go out within the community with these small business owners and educate them as well as far as what options they have, not only with regard to being in the private sector, but also in the public sector.
Yeah, and one of the things that I just saw that Nick brought up, and he may come on later on the show as well, is that apparently 25% of the USA GDP is actually made up of government contracts and all along those lines. So I just wondered, do you feel that enough people in small towns, in minority communities, or a number of these kind of communities even realize that this is what is going on and that they are going for enough of these kind of government contracts? And if you could tell a little bit about your firm as well.
Yes. Again, I'm loving that you're bringing this up too, because again, this is something that I've actually told the VA as well as the SBA that we have to do a better job of getting this information out to these small business owners. So you're absolutely correct. And what's happening, because some of this education and some of this knowledge and awareness is not going out to the small business owner, the thing is that now these contracts are going to large prime companies as opposed to going directly to the small businesses that they were set aside for to go to initially. So again, as I said, me and my firm, what we're trying to do is we've developed our own TPI GovCon program. And in that program, we work alongside small businesses, going out into the communities, as I said, working with small businesses and bringing them to these opportunities. Because without agencies like mine or other agencies that are advocating for these small business owners, there really is not enough awareness out there for them to know that they're actually losing millions and millions of dollars to large companies because of just not being aware of these opportunities.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. I know that one of the things that Steve is really big on, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around this as well, is this notion of innovation and what's going on in our innovation lanes, whether that is high-speed rail or even some of the things that are going on with AI and a number of other things that are taking place. So I was just wondering how that was playing even in your own understanding with entrepreneurs and everything in that way, because I do know that Steve, who's the host of this show, is very much into the whole notion of innovation.
Oh, I love this. I love this question too. Again, just this week, I had some meetings because what's happening, especially in the government contracting arena, is that we have additional programs that are now, being made aware of, things like the STTR and the SBIR. So what these programs are with regard to the federal government is the federal government is now recognizing there's so much innovation, there's so much emerging technology that they have no clue what's happening. So now they're setting up these programs, and in these programs, they're looking for small business owners, these software engineers, right, hardware engineers, in any industry really, to come to them to say, hey, I have an idea of how we can make this better. I have an idea of how we can revolutionize so that when these soldiers are going to war, this is what they can do better. I have an idea that's going to help stop these forest fires. And so things like, what happens in California and Hawaii will not be so devastating. So again, what I'm pushing now with some of the clients I have on my roster is to make sure that we are making aware in the community of these small businesses that, hey, innovation, emerging technology is also, just as important to the federal government.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got to run, but just as a segue to that, and thank you so much. And I apologize about just a kind of a crazy week this week, but I'll be back on Friday. But real quickly, what I would say is that, when you look at after World War II, we were spending about 3% of our GDP on research and development infrastructure. And now, the innovation landscape is changing so fast, particularly in AI. I mean, recently I had a virtual lunch with John Chambers, who used to run Cisco, a $47 billion company. And for many years, John's been talking about AI, but now it's really crossed the chasm. And so he did say that you're going to see a lot of white collar jobs eliminated very fast, but it is going to actually create opportunities for startups to emerge, for companies to have an AI strategy. And so innovation becomes very important. And that's what's kind of frightening is every day that goes by that we can't have a government, we can't fund a government, that's less money going into innovation, less money going into training programs, right? And even eventually, if the government does shut down or we keep incurring this kind of debt, my concern is that we would end at a point where interest rates would stay high, could stifle innovation, make things more expensive. So I think this is an important conversation, and I'll end with the fact that I wish we had more military people in our country running the country. Riley, it might be time to think about bringing back, because the military thinks about the team first, the individual last, and we've got Congress members and leaders that are just running in their own lanes, not thinking of the whole team, and it just hurts the country. But I don't know
Steve,
whether
Steve, along the lines, before you leave, that's actually one of the questions I was going to ask Pepper and everything is what she feels she learned from her military experience that she is able to bring to her entrepreneurial lane and all along those lines. So what is it that you learned while you were in the military? Because it sounds like you kind of went into the military straight out of high school that has helped you in your entrepreneurial journey.
I think he hit it right, the nail on the head, is that we think as a team. We don't think individually. I think that's a huge attribute to have, especially in working in small business arenas. I think the other thing is what you have in the military is that there is no clock. There is no, I clock in at 9 o'clock and I clock out at 5 o'clock. You put in the work and you leave when the work is done. So I think that already, just having those skills, among other things, really kind of led me to, as a natural progression, to want to do things, want to build something for other people, right? Want to build something and include other people and partner with people, collaborate with people. I think just being a part of that family and that team as a military service member really kind of speaks well to putting together, a team of people and moving forward with whatever goals that we have.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One of the other things I was curious about, and it kind of alludes to what Steve was talking about earlier, is what is one of the mistakes that you think entrepreneurs make? I know that during this pandemic, we saw a lot of people that decided they wanted to be entrepreneurs. I sometimes think that a lot of them didn't have business plans, and that's one of the first things that I think of and everything. But I was wondering, what are some of the mistakes and pratfalls that you see with the entrepreneurial lane that surprises you even?
Right. No, thank you for that. I think probably the number one thing that I see as far as missteps for entrepreneurs and small business owners is the initial setup of said business. I think, again, like you said, you called it, during COVID, people were super excited. There was so much opportunity there, which is an amazing thing. However, we also have to do our homework. We have to do our due diligence. So it's very important to do your research and your due diligence, whether that's reading, watching videos, or even getting with someone to get some business consulting, because most people set up the wrong kind of business entity for what they're doing. And again, it's not surprising to me, because obviously, that's not necessarily your wheelhouse. Your wheelhouse isn't setting up entities and making sure they're set up right for not only how you're going to pay yourself for taxes, state taxes, federal taxes. So again, it's the number one thing is that people do not set up their business entities correctly.
Well, one of the other
guests.
It's
been an honor to have you. Thank you so much. And I'll look forward to seeing you guys at the end of the week, but it's been an honor having you. Sorry I have to leave early. Thank you so much.
No, you got to leave, and we understand that. One of the other people that's one of our regular panelists, and all along those lines, and like I said, he joins on a regular basis, is actually an accountant. So, and he's also running for president of the United States, that being Lee Newton Rhodes. And one of the things that he talks about quite often is the family values and the things around that nature, and even how we used to have a more core kind of thing that was going on both within the family, in the African American family, and other families, as well as how a lot of institutions, both our schools and our churches, would teach a number of these kind of things as well. So I just wondering your thoughts, Pepper, around the notion of teaching this even in some of our institutions, be that the school, be that the church, or a number of other kinds of institutions, because I do think that we might have stepped away from that over the last decade or so. But I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. I also think that's a really, interesting concern as well, because I do think, like you said earlier, we have kind of stepped away and we've kind of like changed the model a little bit, haven't we? So I think sometimes, over the years or maybe over the generations, what they've said is they focused on what they think is important. But us being out here in the real world, we actually know what's more important. So again, I would like to see more of financial education and financial literacy. I would like to know more about people knowing about money and banking. I would like for people to know more about insurance and taxes. I think those are just as important, because the first time that you get that first job, that first time you get, that first paycheck, the first time when you get out on your own, all of these things are going to come up. And I really think that it's so important for us to charge ahead and make sure that these young people coming up understand these aspects.
Now that makes a lot of sense. I know another thing that a lot of people are concerned about, and actually, when you met Nick earlier, before we started, he kind of alluded to being the pension attorney and all in that kind of space. And I think a lot of people are not even don't have a plan for the future and a plan for what they're gonna leave behind. There's that whole notion of generational wealth and all in that. And I do know that part of your work is dealing with estate planning and all in that kind of way. So is that something that you are concerned about, that are not enough people have their actual plans in order? And I mean, I think that you should probably be planning when you're in your 20s and 30s. I have two nephews that are 14 and 15, and I hope that they are doing some planning even now. And I need to check with my brother on that. But I just wanted your thoughts. And if you have any kids, are you already starting to plan with them as well, even though you hopefully have many more years here on this planet and everything?
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. No, me personally, I don't have any children, but it is important to me to educate not only my family, my community, my peers, the colleagues and the community, because you're absolutely right. With the exception of COVID, I speak about this every single week to various groups, and everyone always says the same thing. Yeah, I know it's important. I'll get to it. Yes, I know it's important, but I'll get to it. But luckily, one of the things that COVID did is it let people see just how, real life is and how fleeting it is. And so probably since COVID, I probably do now 5 a week, because people are now starting to understand that, yes, I do need to plan. Yes, I do need to let people know what I have, what accounts, what banks. Well, I do need to let people know what my health directive advancements are. I do need to let people know what kind of bank accounts or retirement accounts that I have. I do need to let people know what I want to happen and who should it go to and who's that person they can go to if something were to not only happen to me, but at my demise as well. So again, I'm always pushing for that kind of literacy and education as well.
Yeah, definitely. If you could just really quickly, once again, tell a little bit about the company that you are working with and what y'all do there, because I know y'all are based there in Virginia. By the way, Lee is actually there in, want to say the New Jersey, New York area, and he might have some questions for you as well. But if you could definitely share a little bit about your company also.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it. So I am the vice president of the TPI Group. The TPI Group is an umbrella for many companies that we have in different divisions. One of those divisions is accounting and tax. Mostly our clients are small business owners, so we really appreciate that we're able to help small business owners not only form their business, create financials for that business, and make sure that they're doing it in the most tax efficient way. We also have a financial division where we do with financial and retirement planning. We also have a business consulting division. As I mentioned, we help people go from A to Z with regard to their business goals, whether it be revenue, whether it be how to keep employees, any of those things. We definitely want to make sure that we're helping our business owners do. And as I mentioned, we also have the TPI GovCon program. And in that program, we primarily work with small business owners, veterans, entrepreneurs, and startups with regard to how they can get a foothold inside the government arena.
Sounds great, and everything sounds like an amazing business. And can you maybe share a couple of success stories that you've had, even in the entrepreneurial lane? And then maybe, like I said, Lee might have some questions. I'm sure Nick may be joining us as well. But definitely, if you can share a little bit of your success stories.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I have so many, and I'm so happy that I have so many. A lot of people come to us sometimes when they're kind of in dire straits. So maybe there's this one business owner that we work with, and he's been in business for 22 years. But sometimes, over the years, you have a couple of missteps. Maybe you hire the wrong people or you go the wrong way. So what we're proud that we're able to do, we call that division Rescue 911, right? So we want to go in and we want to help them. If you feel like you're going, hey, I want to be, in the black, but I'm in the red. So we're lucky enough to go in, and what we do is we start from the back office first. We go in, and sometimes we go in and we hire people. We kind of, shuffle things around with regard to their business structure. We redefine and update that business plan, as you mentioned earlier, right? Because that's so important. If you don't have a goal, where are you going, right? So we let them do that. We also, take a hold of their marketing to make sure, are they capitalizing on the right marketing research, and are they advertising in the right arenas? Are they going to the right meetings to make sure that, they're getting the clients that they want? And again, we also do a very deep dive forensically with regard to their accounting and their financials and statements and cash and things of that nature. And with this particular company, what we did is we brought in the government aspect. And by doing that, they initially, there was a business that had trucks, and they take these trucks and people rent these trucks, right? So they rent them out to different people, and they also rent out dumpsters. So what we did, knowing that they have these trucks, we were like, well, you know what, if you just put a scraper on the front of it, now you can be a snow scraper, right? So what we did is we went after those kind of contracts with the state, and then that's what kind of brought them back around. Is what we did is we kind of diversified where their revenue was coming from. So when there's certain times that maybe during these months, the winter months, maybe you're not out there, no one's leasing your trucks, but we can use those same trucks, use them for this function, and now we're bringing in additional revenue, and now that company has the opportunity to, for more success and more staying power.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things I was curious about is I know, because we've talked about it on this network on a couple of times, is there have definitely been folks that have gotten grants and the oversight hasn't been all that great, because definitely that was happening with some of the PPP loans and all in that line. So I was just wondering whether your company does some things in that oversight space as well, because I do know that is something that even Kim Calhoun has talked about, where people have gotten some of these government grants and haven't necessarily done the work that they were supposed to be doing with them. So I was wondering if the company that you are part of also helps with some of the oversight to make sure that some of these abuses that have happened in the past don't happen with some of your clients.
Oh, absolutely. Again, that's one of the top 5 things that we counsel about, is that we understand capital is key. You can't do these things. You can't pay your employees and your payroll without capital. So yeah, one of the things we come up with is we have about 5 to 6 options that we present to our small business owners with regard to making sure that they do have the capital and they do have the cash to move on. So again, and that comes in various places, whether you get, something from the bank, something from another lending partner, something from a grant program that we have, that we work with the state as well as with the federal government with regard to these grants. Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. Lee, any questions or any thoughts? Like I said, Pepper is a military veteran. As you can tell, she's done a lot in that financial space, and you're in that financial space as well as an accountant. And Nick, you might have some questions as a pension attorney, but either one of you have any questions for Pepper and all along those lines?
Just a comment on military veteran financial planner. One thing that when it comes to CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, the common denominator of most CEOs actually come from the military. A lot of people don't know that. They're not Harvard graduates. They're not Yale graduates. They come from the military. So it's almost like if somebody wants to be a CEO of a company, best thing to do is go in the military, because that's the highest thing out there. The other thing is this, 25% of the US GDP is the USA government. With that, there's a very important document that no one reads in high school, middle school. They don't read it in law school. They don't read it in MBA school. But, and I'm kind of embarrassed that it's just not presented to people. And here it is. The budget of the United States government. This is what should be required reading, in my opinion, of all high school people in the United States. Why? This represents 25% of our gross domestic product. And this is where people need to do deep dives, which, by the way, you can pull this document off the internet, and you can actually go through it and see, like they said on this page, every department and how much they spend, from the Department of Health and Human Resources to energy, et cetera. Now, as you go through this wonderful document, you find it has one major flaw. It spends $5 trillion and only takes in $3.5 trillion or so. And that is the deficit, which if your household took in you know, 5,000, it took basically spent 5,000 and only took in 3,500, you run a deficit, which you then put on your credit card, which is called the national debt. This is not explained to anybody because what we're doing is we are basically making our grandchildren, great grandchildren broke because we're putting on a credit card for them. It's really immoral.
Nick, along those same lines, and just really quickly, along those same lines, and I had a question for Pepper tied to what you're saying and everything, because one of the things that I know that you have to do, and I know a lot of people get overly frustrated by it, and all in that space is like Nick is showing this lovely document, and it is a document that you can find online and all in that space. Those government contracts and those government requirements are full of tons of books and tons of things that people don't understand and everything. So I was wondering, Pepper, how do you deal with that, and how do you even share your expertise? Because I'm thinking that you've got to go through tons of government regulations, tons of government requirements, even in terms of trying to help these entrepreneurs get these money that is available for them. And I think that's part of the frustration that people have, is that they have to go through all of these various things. They can get a middle person like yourself to help them in that process. But how do you deal with navigating those various complex negotiations that go on with government regulations? Because I've seen some of those, not tons of them, but I have seen some of those books. I'm going like, there was no way I'd be able to get through those. And some of them are some very important rules that you have to deal with. So I was just wondering how you have learned to navigate that in your various experiences.
Thank you so much. You're absolutely right. There's definitely a lot of red tape, and it is not user-friendly to navigate. But I will have to say, and we've heard it before, it takes a village. You need to have a really great team. And I am lucky enough to have a really great team here at TPI, where we have lawyers and we have business consultants that go through and read all the fine print, so that when we train our entrepreneurs, startups, and business owners, they get that knowledge. And we like to come from a place of education every single time. So again, it's very important for us to have our team to go through all of that. And before we even, sign up with the contract, we're reading over the contract. We're making sure that all the regs, that we understand what we have to go through. So that happens all the way through our training program, is that, yes, part of our team, we do have to read those regulations. We do have to read those contracts, as well as that fine print. And we make sure we present that in a user-friendly manner to our clients.
Yeah. You mentioned something else earlier, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, and maybe even Lee wants to jump in on this as well, because you talked about the team aspect, even the team aspect of your company. And I know that on a lot of teams, even the team here at Pod TV, we don't always see eye to eye on issues, but we realize that we are part of a greater team and all along those lines. So I'm thinking that even in that corporate environment, there may be folks that you don't necessarily agree with, even because of their religious beliefs, their political beliefs, or a number of other reasons that you may not agree with them and everything. So I just wondered if you could speak to the importance of a team, and even how you unify a team that is diverse. Because I'm imagining that even at your company, you have a diverse crew, and they may not all share the same political viewpoints, or even the same religious viewpoints, or even the same orientation viewpoints, or a number of other viewpoints as well. So I just wondered if you could speak to team and how you navigate having a diverse team, because I imagine that diversity is also important to you. So I imagine that the team is diverse and not everybody is thinking like-minded.
Yes, that's very true. You're absolutely right. Yes, I am lucky enough to have a really great diverse team. People come from all different, cultures, nationalities, backgrounds, all of that good stuff. But I think when you have a good leader, and I hope that I'm blessed to lead my team well, but when you have a good leader, some of those things kind of go by the wayside, because what you want to focus on is what you do have in common. And what we do have in common is the goal, is who we're helping, who we're in front of, what this is about. It's not about us as an individual. It's about us as a team. It's about us as a team presenting these educational goals to these business owners. And I think that is what our team, and my team, that, again, like I said, I'm very blessed to have an amazing team of people who understand what that goal is. And that's what we're always shooting for.
You're also a business coach, and I was just wondering, being a business coach and helping these businesses and everything, what do you think makes a good leader? Because definitely that is something that has come up in a number of conversations. So I was just wondering whether it is on the political front or whether it's any kind of front. So what, in your mind, makes up a good leader?
I think for me, personally, what makes up a good leader is first having a vision, right? Because as a leader, people will follow you. they will follow you. It's not like being a manager or anything, right? A manager is going to go through the motions, right? They're just going to go through the day to day. But if you're a real leader and you have this team that's looking to you for the answers, what are we going to do? Where are we heading toward? What's my mission today? And excuse the military logo, but that's just where I come from. That's ingrained in who I am. So what is our mission? So as a leader, I have to now come up with the vision. I have to come up with our mission, and then what we're charging ahead with. I need you to do X, Y, Z. I need you to do A, B, C. So I think that is super important when you're talking about true leadership, is that, again, if you are a true leader, and I believe that I am, with being a leader comes with a lot of, responsibility. And in that responsibility, they look to you for, what's our mission? Where are we going? When are we going to get there? How long will it take? Right? So for me, that is kind of what a true leader is.
Speaking of mission, and then, like I said, I'm sure Lee has a question as well, but speaking of mission and all along those lines, I'm actually sometimes surprised in both nonprofits and profit organizations that quite a few of them don't have a mission statement, or if they have a mission statement, it is an outdated mission statement, because I do believe that mission statements change, that mission statements are constantly evolving and all in that kind of way. So is that something that you have had to guide your companies to? Because I've definitely seen quite a few companies that, just like they don't have a business plan, they don't have a mission statement either. So I just wondered your thoughts around that, because as you mentioned mission, I was going like, I know quite a few folks that don't have a mission, and I would argue that that's part of the problem with the U.S. government, is that it doesn't really have a idea of where it's going and have a true mission, and all along those lines, the way that it should and everything. But I was just wondering your thoughts around the mission statements and whether we are seeing enough companies have a true mission statement.
I think we're seeing some companies, but I think it's true to form of what you said, is that just like a business evolves, so do your mission. A lot of people come to me initially saying that, hey, Pepper, I want to start a business. I want to do cleaning, and I want to do janitorial service, and I want to cut the lawn, and I want to do the roof. And I always come back to them and be like, okay, we need to pare this down. What exactly do you want to do? What do you want to do for people? What issue or problem do you want to solve for people? I like to go in and kind of just hone it down, and let's focus on one area, not just 17 things. I get one area, and then we start there. And then as things happen organically, naturally, then we branch out to things. But a lot of times going in, people are so passionate and they're so excited to be on their own. They thought, hey, I've been doing this mechanic thing for somebody else for 20 years. I want to do it on my own, but I want to wash cars and sell batteries. And I always go, I'm like, okay, let's hone in on what we're going to do first. In our 3 years, we're going to do this. And the next 5 years, we're going to do this. And as we do that, you're right, our mission is changing, because maybe our mission is, I want to be the best doggone mechanic and make sure I give you the best customer service. But then after we've owned that for a few years, then it's like, you know what? I think I'm ready. Okay, I think I'm ready to add this part of it. Now what I want to do is I want to be painting and do auto body shop. And I'm like, okay, so now that's kind of broadened our mission, hasn't it? So again, I do think it's important for people, coaches, and leaders like me, to, as we work with these small business owners and these entrepreneurs and startups, that we do see that it has to come in segments. You cannot have your whole 30-year career in one business plan. That's not really how it works. You really have to take small bites of it to do it effectively.
Just really quickly, and then, like I said, turn it over to Lee as well. But I know that sometimes, even in the arts world, and I have several friends in the arts world, that they have a vision, they have a plan, and they know what they want to do. But unfortunately, they have to do gig work in order to survive. So I was wondering your thoughts around that, because I know a number of people, myself included, that have to work multiple jobs in order to have their entrepreneurial vision go forth. So I just wanted your thoughts around that, because I think that also happened during the pandemic even more. So we saw a number of people that were having a vision of something they wanted to do, but then they also had to pay their bills. So in order to pay the bills, they might have gone to Uber or Grubhub or a number of the other companies that are out there in order to make a living. So just wondering your thoughts around that.
Yes, and I fully support that, because there are a lot of times that people don't necessarily have the capital to do what they want to do in the manner that they want to do it. So just like me, when I started up my first business that I had when I was like in my 20s, I had my day job, but I also on the side, I was like, well, overseas, you don't get a lot of people that know how to do hair or anything. So I started my little business of just doing hair. Now I had this job, but something I wanted to do, create more of, absolutely. But again, that's what you have to do in order for it to make sense. Sometimes you do have to make sure that you start it on a smaller level, or you do it on the side. Because what people tend to do is they just quit their job and they said, I am going to be a limousine operator full time. And it's like, well, you may not necessarily have the capital to do that the way you want at this time. So you may have to keep that day job for a little while until you can save up some money, get one car, get two cars. So again, I wholeheartedly support that because I think that's the smarter way to go. Because if not, then you're going to be dependent on trying to get capital by any means necessary. And that is a misstep.
Yep. Lee, you have any thoughts and everything?
Yeah, first, welcome to Pod TV. It's a pleasure meeting you, hearing your story. Nick mentioned before in terms of the number of leaders or CEOs coming from the military. Can you talk about your transition from the military to private industry? Because you spoke about not quitting your day job. So the military was your day job, but somehow you made that transition. And can you speak to that, please?
Absolutely. So as I said, I did 8 years in the United States Navy. Very proud of my service there. But once I left, there's something that you have. There's a transition before you actually get out of the military. So it's it's a much better transition now. When I was in, it was not as good. But there's a transition and they kind of help you. So you go to this program and they kind of help you, letting you know that, hey, you've kind of been outside the world for a while. So let me tell you what's going on. This is a good company. This is what you're doing. This is what you did in the military. This is how it can transition to what you can do out here in the civilian world. So having part of that, and during that process, I had a bit of a mentor, and I was lucky to have that person to help me along as well. So in that class, I met someone else who helped me to say, okay, this is what you want to do. This is how you do it. So again, I'm going to say it all the time. It takes a village. You really need to use your resources with regard to taking those steps in life. And I was lucky enough that I had that amazing resource in that transition program coming out of the Navy. And then I also met some people older than me that had done things before that also helped me during that transition to say, hey, why don't you do this? So then I got another day job, which helped me because it used the skills and the experience I had in the military. And that's what I took to this job. And that first job I had was working for a financial planning firm.
It sounds great and everything. Just really quickly, along those same lines, there has been a lot of conversations over the last several years, and definitely even before the pandemic, around the way we treat our veterans, particularly here in the United States. And like I said, I have been involved for about 10 years or maybe even a little bit longer with a group called Next Level Veterans that does advocacy work for the veterans organizations, but they also host, which I'm part of, a Road to the Apollo, where they use entertainment in order to bring these issues to people's awareness using the kind of Apollo there in New York model, because we do a talent competition, but we also talk about veterans' rights and everything. So I just wondered, as a veteran, your thoughts around that and whether we are doing enough with our veterans here in the United States, because I do know that there are even some medical issues that are going on in our veterans communities where things are not being dealt with, and even some of the things that are going on with both homelessness and our mental health with our veterans as well. So I was wondering your thoughts around that as a veteran.
Well, as a veteran, I do think that we could always do more. I think it's important for us to do more. We give of ourselves selflessly because we believe in this country and we believe in the freedoms of this country. So as we transition out, I think that we certainly need help in many different areas. We need help, obviously emotionally now. We need help medically now, right? We need help and with regard to business and business development. When you come out of the military, it's like you've been sequestered, on the moon for like 8, 10, 12 years, and you really don't know what's happening in the real world. So for me, that transition program and working with that mentor I had really opened me up to how much do people get paid, or where do I live, or how do taxes work, or how do so again, I really think that I would feel much better if we can use and push so much more resources into our veterans, into knowing what our veterans need and knowing what they don't know about as they transition out of the military. And again, like I said, it's on more than just one level. It has to be on multiple levels because, as you guys are aware of, we all have various experiences when we're in the military, whether it be war, whether it be just being secluded and away from your family for years, any of those things. So I think definitely I would want to push and have many more resources, push toward our veterans.
Yeah, it sounds great and everything. Along those same lines, I know one of the things that is the reason that many people get into the military is, one, that patriotism, but also in addition to the patriotism, there are folks like you that come from a family of the military. So they figure that it's almost like a rite of passage, for lack of a better term, because they know that they're going to go into that. But a lot of times, and I know that even part of the advertisement is that you will get to travel the world and you'll get to see parts of the world as well. So we've got Shaquille that has joined us from Australia, but I was just wondering your thoughts around that, because definitely I'm thinking that you got to see some parts of the world that you might not have seen otherwise. And I'm not sure where your original home is, but if you can definitely share about that world travel aspect as well. And sometimes you're going into environments that are hostile, so you might not want to get out as much as you would like to get out, but I'd just love to hear your thoughts around the world travel aspect of the military.
Right. That's a really good point. And you're right. That's definitely something when you're meeting with your recruiter, when you're in 12th grade in high school, that's definitely one of the things that they're going to say is that you're going to be able to see so many different things. And of course, my recruiter from Southern California said the same thing to me. But since I came from a legacy of service members, I understood that part. So my journey was a little bit different. I really wanted to focus on the brotherhood of it as well, too. I knew that some of my uncles and my father had had fast friends for most of their lives, and those friends came from the military. So to me, that really spoke to me, too, that sense of sisterhood, that sense of brotherhood. But to be able to have your sisters and your brothers, in that sense, travel with you to these places that you've never been. I got to go to Japan. I got to go to Spain. I got to go to, places like Puerto Rico, again, all these different places. And you're right, without the military, I would have never been able to go to any of those places and have those experiences that I had with my brothers and my sisters.
How are women treated in the military? That was the other question I was going to ask you really quickly, because I know that that's been a conversation both historically and even currently. So I was just wondering how you feel that women in the military are treated.
Well, I have to say that aspect was definitely an eye opener. I got into the military after the scandal about women and about harassing people and things of that nature. So they were definitely a little bit better with regard to how they treat women on ships and things of that nature. But I think at the time, at least for me, we really have a long way to go. I think it really has been seen as an old boys club for a really long time. But, us women we're going in there and we're putting our mark on it, and we're a part of that brotherhood just the same. So I think we need to also just think about, we have to treat each other with respect, whether it's a brother, a sister, whatever the case may be. You really need to treat your brothers and sisters in arms with respect, and know that at the end of the day, those are the people that you count on.
Yeah, no doubt. I know one thing that Shaquille talks about is the Five Eyes countries and all along those lines. So he definitely has a respect for the military and a respect for the military's alliance with other countries, including Australia, the UK, and of course, Shaquille can mention the other two as well, Canada being one of them. But Shaquille, if you would definitely share your thoughts around that alliance that has existed for decades.
Well, you've named four of them, so just don't forget New Zealand, and we'll be okay. But no, Pepper, thank you for your service. Obviously, not just to your own country, but for all of us around the world that have benefited from America's help. I've got a lot of friends in the military, obviously in Australia, or former military friends in Australia, and it's a common theme. There's no real plan for what happens when you leave and what your financial future is going to look like. And look, it's complicated. People don't really know, but when you're in the military, certainly in Australia, pretty much everything that you do is with the military. So if you've got private health insurance, it's the military private health insurer that provides that for you. If you've got a home loan, you've probably got that home loan through the military bank. So, people oftentimes don't have much of a understanding of, people don't have an understanding of finance in the first place, but if they're coming out of the military, it's hard for them to really know what sort of products are available for them and, how to actually set up a plan for themselves. So I think that's a shame. So I think anybody who's dedicated a part of their life to the protection of all of our freedoms should be able to benefit from a comfortable retirement when they're ready.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Hey, Pepper, just out of curiosity, because one of the things, and I don't think I was speaking out of school by saying this because he's mentioned on other shows as well, but Shaquille has definitely worked in the space of hedge funds, and actually Sasha, who has also joined us from Canada, has worked in the space of investments and making solid investments and all along those lines. So I was just wondering whether those were some areas that you and your company work in. So I didn't know if you worked with any hedge fund kind of companies also, but definitely if you would share a little bit about some of the people that you work with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so we partner, as I said, we partner with other people, and one of the things that we partner with is I partner with another firm that does that. You know, again, so that's part of the financial planning arm, is that we don't do it per se, but we do have another company that does with, you know, wealth management, risk management, things of that nature, to make sure that, you know, our clients are taken care of on all fronts.
Yeah, definitely. And everything. I see that Sasha has joined us as well. And I definitely appreciated this conversation. I don't know if Sasha's, because he's got Modern Investment, which is a show around investment that'll be coming our way at 1:00 here on Pod TV. So I know him and Milan and others deal with a lot of things in that investment space. They give some advice. They are not financial planners, and they make that clear during the show, but they do give some solid advice around things that they are doing in their own market. And they have different strategies. And definitely Sasha can talk a little bit about that, and maybe a little bit about the show that'll be coming up at 1:00. Because I do know that I think Milan is very much into the stockbroker kind of notion of doing it. So kind of like going by the whole stock market exchange. And I think that Sasha has a different strategy, but Sasha can tell you his strategy versus Milan's and some of the others as well. But definitely share a little bit with Pepper about some of the things that you're doing in the financial lane. And then, of course, I'm going to ask you for an update on Ukraine as well as we get ready to wrap up. We can go a little bit over, though.
With financial show, it's very simple situation. Nobody gives advices to anybody. What I'm doing, I'm arranging the show and whoever participates, and I'm sharing with people strategies that I'm using, and not just strategies that you should buy this and sell that. I'm telling what I'm doing every single week. The show is weekly on Wednesdays. So on Wednesday, like today, I will tell people transactions which I've done actually during the last year. My track record, 175% profit in the last 11 months. I'm looking now for the 12 months, so it will be 1 year, and hopefully I will get into 200%, but maybe not, because the market is very difficult now. So 175 is good enough for me. Now, Milan, on the other
Sasha, there's no such thing as a difficult market, my friend. Come on now.
No, difficult market. I'm talking about the way my strategy works. Obviously, what I've done, I cut down on the size of. For example, I'm selling cash covered puts on stocks. Now, if the stock is going down, I will be exercised, and I will acquire stock that could continue to go down. That's happened to me during last year only once. The stock is a well-known name, Netflix. I didn't mind to have some Netflix, but one thing when you are buying Netflix because you believe in the company's potential, so on. Another thing when you are being exercised and you are, okay, here's your stock, whether you want it or not, and you must take it. Now, that's not a big deal because Netflix is not going to disappear. And we are talking about only 200 shares. And once I got the stock, I can sell covered calls and slowly get out of the position, which right now is the only one losing position, unfortunately, that I have. But
I'll just say, Sasha, and hopefully today I will actually have time to come onto your show, because I'll be heading to the airport around about the same time as your show comes on. So I'll have about an hour or so free, so I might be able to pop on. But I'll just say, with the Jinx America is entertaining. With the war zone going on inside the House of Representatives, I actually increased my volatility positions, and I wouldn't mind having a look at the VIX at the moment to see whether this seeming instability, a little bit of instability, might spook the markets just a little bit. I'd expect the Vega part of the options pricing mechanism to actually increase a bit as a result, because obviously they don't have a speaker. They've got 45 days to avert the government shutdown. The markets don't like that very much. So that'll be interesting to see.
Markets like certainty. When it's uncertainty, market doesn't like it. However, what's your prediction? I got yesterday a fantastic bet with Adam, who participated in a show. We bet $500 that Trump will not win the presidency in 2024. So
But I'd probably take the bet if he's a contender. But what I'll say is this: as you know, every single one of my political predictions when it comes to elections has failed. So whatever I say, bet against, and you'll be fine. But I will just quickly say, because I had the Big No campaign rally that I attended, and I've been blasted all over the media here in Australia. And I'm like, look, I went to the Yes campaign as well. I just want to find out what's happening with this proposed constitutional change to Australia before we have a referendum in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And then overnight, I hear about the Speaker being ousted for the first time in US history. And I just quickly was trying to catch up on it. I saw an interview with Sean Hannity and Jim Jordan. So Jim Jordan is being proposed, or we have to give credit to Nick Talavita and I think Mark and a couple of others that said, what if they just put Donald Trump in as the Speaker? And that's actually being proposed at the moment, that maybe Donald Trump could be a Speaker. Now, whether that's to appease him or whether they think it's a good idea for him to be the Speaker while he's in all these trials he's got going on, I don't know. But, hey, I'm not American, so get the popcorn.
A speaker must be a person born in the United States or not necessarily?
I think you do because you're third in line, but something like the Secretary of State, you don't need, because obviously Henry Kissinger was not born in the US and he was the Secretary of State. But the Speaker, I think it's the top 4 positions in line to what would have been the throne if you were still part of the UK, that you have to be a natural born citizen.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either, but just really quickly, because I know we're here to wind down and all along those lines.
Trudeau, he could be a great speaker.
Trudeau could be
don't introduce any more craziness into America by flushing Canadian toilets into the US.
We don't need to do that and everything. Hey, Pepper, just really quickly, and along those same lines, and like I said, go maybe a few minutes over, but not too much over. One thing that has come up in the fiscal lanes, and I know that Sasha's going to love me bringing this up, but I'm going to hear your thoughts around this as a financial planner and a fiscal planner. But there's been a lot of conversations, even among some of the planners, as to whether folks should go into some of the crypto lanes. So I was wondering if that's something that you talk about, or is that something that you are even dealing with in your own financial planning, or do you leave that alone and stick to the old tried dollars and cents and everything? Or are there conversations even in your own company around cryptocurrency?
Yes, crypto. Here we go.
So, Pepper, is that something that your company deals with, or you deal at all with the cryptocurrency market?
Actually, yeah, we get a lot of questions with regard, obviously, rightfully so, right, about cryptocurrency. And again, I think for a financial planner, what we look at is historicals, right? So everything that we do when we're advising people about things, they want to know, is this a safe bet? The reason why we can tell them that it's a safe bet is because we look at the history. We look at the history of that fund. We look at the history of that bond. We look at the history, and that's how we know. But, again, I don't know if I would necessarily advise someone to put all of their eggs in that particular basket. But what I would say is that I would like to see, with regard to cryptocurrency, more history. And then I probably would be a little bit more comfortable in advising to put more in that. But again, I understand that it's a new shiny toy and people really enjoy it. So definitely, I just say, hey, if you're going to do it, just make sure it's not all the eggs in that basket. But the other things that you have, at least you know that, hey, there's some history to it. If I got my money in some REITs or there's some history to it that I can kind of go behind it and let you know, okay, this is a safe bet for these reasons.
Pepper, may I ask you, would you advise people to put half of their eggs in the crypto?
Oh, half. Oh, that's a lot. Oh, no, I'm hurting. I can't do it. It's too much. That's a lot.
But I would certainly be suggesting that people may want to look at bonds. And also, I think that they have to be a little bit careful about asset prices. So a lot of the complaint that's happened over the last few years with COVID and the government response to COVID around the world has been these high headline rates of inflation. Of course, when that inflation starts to come down, it also means that the upward trajectory on hard assets like real estate and like the share market, especially things like the NASDAQ, which is a bit more responsive, you're going to see a dampening of those returns. I'd be very interested to see what the high yield or the junk bond markets are going to look like. And for people that want exposure, you look at getting into that with ETFs or mutual funds and things like that. But I'll be interested to see what that looks like. I was actually reading an old book today, an old book from the 80s when Michael Milken was a bond trader before he went to jail, and it actually showed some of the returns. And you're getting 550, 600 points over the Treasury returns, over government paper returns, and you've got about a 1.5% default rate. So if you've got a wide exposure to high yield bonds, and you can leverage that a bit, or you could perhaps use some of Sasha's strategies, sell put options against it, that sort of thing. I think it actually do quite well.
Hey,
I think
Pepper,
it
just
also
really
depends
quick.
on the time, the age, right? So again, if you're giving this, would you give the same advice to a 30-year-old versus a 60-year-old? You know what I mean? So again, we have to think about that variable as well.
Agree.
Yeah, you wouldn't, but I would say, of course, that most people are not going to trade the markets the way that Sasha and I would. So I wouldn't ordinarily dream of ever buying an ETF unless I desperately wanted large exposure really quickly. But otherwise, I'll just go and buy the underlying myself. But there is exposure, for example, in things like bonds, emerging markets, debt, all those types of places where actually they should be, I think, included in a person's portfolio. How much weighting there would depend on their age and their potential requirements later on in life. This is not financial advice, by the way, guys. Seek your own professional advice. But I would suggest that they should have some exposure. And I think that very few people would get that exposure outside of something like mutual funds in the US and exchange traded funds. And the reason for that is because it's not sexy. Everybody wants to buy Amazon at $5 a share and watch it read at $500 a share.
Right.
These things are not sexy. They're not cool. And especially bonds just in general, there's no upside to them. The best you're going to get is your money back. But there is some juicy yields, which makes sense for older people who just want reasonable retirement money. Spread your risk out. The best way to do that, get that diversification, would be, I think, for
Hey,
the fund.
Pepper, just really quickly, because I know we're going to wind down and everything, but I was going to get to you as well, Uli, and everything. But Pepper, as we're getting ready to wind down and all in that kind of way, I was wondering, because actually Shaquille kind of alluded to it, what kind of advice do you give in that real estate lane? Because I do know a number of people are looking at their financial planning and thinking of real estate, whether they're going to it individually or whether they're going into some of these group deals, because I do know that there are group deals in real estate as well, in both business real estate or corporate real estate as well as regular real estate. So I was wondering on the one end, what advice you give on that. And I'm going to admit it, I'll tell it, and folks will tell them about their bets. I took a bet, even though I don't think I won because I haven't checked the numbers, but what's $2? So I did buy a $2 lottery ticket, since it's got that $1 billion prize that I don't think anybody has won yet. So I took a chance on having looked to see whether I got anything. Actually, it might have drawn last night and yesterday. So what is your advice?
If you win the $1 billion, I'll buy it off you for like $700 million because I don't have to pay the tax.
Lottery thing as well. So what is your advice to folks that are wanting to buy that quick lottery ticket?
Wow, that is an interesting financial plan. I don't know if that's the most smartest financial plan, but I hear you, brother. I definitely hear you. What I like to say, especially, keep in mind, I'm in the DC metro area. So with regard to real estate, I think you have to think about that with regard to your financial planning and your retirement planning. You have to. And again, like I said, I want to mention that I'm in a really, great, tri-state area where we don't have some of the same pitfalls as other areas do. Because in the DC metro area, real estate is hot. It's really great. A lot of businesses are coming here. So to be able to have that as a part of your retirement portfolio really makes sense to include things like real estate. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
So was the message there, just for those of us who are overseas, was the message there that we should invest in real estate where all the politicians live? Was that the message?
I think yes. I think the message is that real estate is important too. As a retirement, yes.
We didn't have time to get into it today, but Jeff Bezos is making a lot of money off of government contracts. He made his net worth off of it. Boeing, who was in Seattle, moved their headquarters to Chicago. Oops, not close enough to DC. They moved to DC. Jeff Bezos, realizing all the money's in Washington, bought a house in the DC area. All the big money is going to DC because of the reason that we just brought up on this program. 25% of all the U.S. government GDP comes from the great Washington, D.C. area. So you can't beat D.C. and government contracting, that's for sure. The problem is what you just said, Pepper. Small companies don't know how to access it.
Yeah.
All the pork is going to the large companies and super wealthy people and the small people are getting their rears handed to them because they don't know how to access the government swimming pool. So
But that's going to get back into the same issue that we bring up a lot here, that where I say, if you want to have the same sorts of social services as some of the European counterparts and other Western countries around the world, you're going to have to increase the total tax take as a percentage of the GDP. That's the only way you can do it. I think that means that you have to broaden your tax base and not have such a progressive marginal rate. You should have some progressivity in there, but not the way that you have it there. It just doesn't work very well. But also you need to have small business chambers of commerce like the one that I represent and other groups like mine who can talk to government about the things that make it harder for small companies to start up in the first place, but also what makes it harder for them to even survive, because they are a very important part of the economy. And unfortunately, what you get is the big lobby groups that are funded by big, powerful multinational corporations whose shareholders, let's be honest, are not always just American. Or in Australia, they're not all just Australia. The biggest mining companies in this country that make mega amounts of money are owned significantly by overseas shareholders, which is fair and reasonable in a free and open economy. But it does mean that there's a disparity with how much of that wealth is actually reinvested into the community, and there's a lot of people left behind. And that balancing act is not a political thing. It's not a left or right political thing. That balancing act is something that you have to actually get right.
Actually, I would like to tell you something. I found one investment that could be even bigger and better than crypto. And you know what it is?
What's that?
Don't tell anybody.
It's Russian stock market. You can buy Russian stocks. You can make tons of money, but you can lose everything.
You can't. It's hard to invest there. I tried to do that the other day, Sasha, and I got banned from being able to invest when the Russian market collapsed. I was going to buy a bunch of stuff, and TD Ameritrade shut me down. So I was going impossible. Hey, speaking of stuff,
I had this trade on the Russian ruble against the US dollar with Sasha. We were just mucking around, and I had a trade on, and I don't know, it wasn't worth much, 10 grand or something. And what I did was when I closed the position, I left the profit in rubles. So I can't remember. Do you remember what it was? It was about $1,500 or $2,000 worth of US dollars in rubles. And I just thought I'll just leave it sit there in my account for a bit because it's just funny to have this weird foreign currency there. And then after the war broke out with the Ukraine, my broker actually forced my position closed, and I wasn't levered into that position. It was actually rubles sitting in my account, but they forced it closed and converted it to US.
Shakil, because you're holding enemy's currency. And
trading with the enemy, dude.
Yeah, trading with the enemy, that's not allowed. Hey, Pepper, just really quickly, because I know we're going to wind down and everything. Yeah, and I kind of alluded to it just as a side and everything. But what do you tell folks? Because I know a number of people, not just myself, but others, but will go and they will say, look, I don't have the capital of, say, a Sasha Starr or a Shakil or a Nick Palveda or anybody else here on this panel. And therefore, this whole conversation around stocks and bonds and investments in everything is something that I can't get into because, I'm trying to pay my rent or I'm trying to pay for my survival and all along those lines. So what is your advice? Because I'm sure that you get people even there in DC, because I do know the DC area that are going to tell you, hold on, I'm asking Pepper.
Just go and rob the bank. Because this is the best business. Historically, return on investment when you're robbing the bank is highest by far. That's what you have to do.
So, Sasha, are you suggesting that Pepper advise her clients to become politicians or just Donald Trump? Which
exactly. You can't say
no, Pepper. So seriously, what is your advice to those that are lesser, that are part of the, I won't say lower class, but they are in the lower end of the economic spectrum and everything? So what is the advice that you give to folks there? Because I know that there are a number of those that are in that space in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So what advice do you give to folks that are wanting to invest but feel that they don't have the wherewithal to invest?
Well, the advice that I give, most people don't like it, because here's what's happening. The majority of people are living beyond their means. And I think first we need to address that. Is that here's my point. Do you need a 3-bedroom apartment if it's just you and your son? No, you don't. Do you need to live in a 5-bedroom, house if it's just you and your husband? No, not necessarily. So I think first what I look at when I'm looking at, people's overall situation is that you're paying more in rent or more in mortgage than you have to. So if we would have first addressed that, then they would find the money that they need to invest for their future. But again, we don't think about that. That's not the first thought we have. But I'm posing to people that I want that to be your first thought. I need that to be your first thought when we're planning. Everything I do is methodical. I put my movements, and it's all about strategy. And again, what people are coming to me, they're coming to me after they already have had the DC townhouse with the 3 levels that cost them $5,600 a month for them, their wife, and their dog. And I was like, well, what you should have done is maybe move out to, a little bit further out, and then you can get $1,800 for that same 3-level townhouse, and then you would have the money to put away into your retirement plan.
Great advice
I'll
and everything.
just say very quickly, one of the things that we talk about on the show is the lack of financial education that's given to our young kids, or to any of us when we came out of high school. I'll just say I've heard a few young people saying to me recently, well, it's okay for you, Shaquille, because you're older now and you've already made a lot of money in your life and stuff like that. I'm like, no, but hang on, like I was just like you. Like I'm not that old. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm getting older, One of the things that I'll say to people is, if you assume for a moment that inflation goes to zero and stays at zero for the next 40 years, and you're just starting in the workforce right now, average wage in the United States is about $70,000 at the moment, the average. I know that means a lot of people are earning less than that, but that's the average. So call it $60,000 after some taxes, $60,000 by 40 years. You're going to earn $2.4 million over your life without doing anything special. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to do anything. So you're going to earn $2.4 million. If you assume that you're going to earn $2.4 million over the 40 years that you're going to be working, the question is, what do you want to do with that money?
Yes.
You need to have some money to go and have a good time and have some fun, but you also need to put some of that money into something that's going to help you to grow your wealth over time. And so many of us don't do that. And I'm one of them. I didn't do that. I was just lucky because I earned a lot in my 30s. But otherwise, I didn't do that, and it's hard for us to follow, but that's what you have to do.
Shaquille, and along those same lines, I would say that a number of people, and I know that Nick's getting ready to wrap us all up and all along those lines, but one of the things that I think that we probably spend more than half of our money on things what Pepper was talking about that are overspent, because I do know a number of people are overspending in terms of their, but I also know that a number of people are, and I'm guilty of it, just like you're guilty of things. I'm guilty of eating out way too much. So I know that a number of us are also spending way too much money in that space. Because if you add the food and the housing, there are probably some people that are making about 60 to 70% of their income and their money coming in on those two items just alone.
The biggest overspending that I see, the biggest overspending that I see is on taxes. People don't pay enough attention to their taxes. Absolutely. And why would you, I'm not trying to be political, but why would you voluntarily hand over more money to the government than you absolutely have to? You should treat taxes as a liability or as an expense, like you would if you were a company. And then you would try everything you can to reduce that expense.
You sound like you don't love your government.
He does. He just barely lives in Australia.
He's always traveling around. He's doing the Chamber of Commerce.
Correct. Your big expenses: real estate, cars, and taxes. And so you make $60,000, you spend $60,000, you made zero. What money is left over investing? And the real estate market and cars are out of control. Yeah. And that's the reason I love the book, The Millionaire Next Door, because the reason you're the millionaire next door is you don't buy a new car, you buy an old used car.
Yes.
You spend cash for it, and it's real cheap. The millionaire next door drives a piece of trash car. They live in a decent house, but they don't overpay for their house. Exactly. And then they have room to invest. I mean, and unfortunately, The Millionaire Next Door, which is a great book, I think by Bill Denko and Tom Stanley, isn't taught in any schools. In other words, real estate, cars, and taxes should be taught in high school and middle school. Yes. But there's no courses on that. And it just drives me nuts. And the budget should be taught too, which is one reason I keep bringing it up here.
Maybe the budget should be taught to the politicians.
Yeah,
right? Like there should be a requirement before you ever step foot on the House floor or the Senate that you have to understand something to do with money. Guys, it's been wonderful being here. Lovely to meet you, Pepper. I'm afraid I do have to actually run. So hopefully I'll catch up with you guys later.
Sounds good. And we're going to get it wrapped up with everybody and everything. But definitely that whole notion that even I have seen, because I work at a cultural arts center, and before the pandemic, there used to be various courses in the real estate, because there would be courses where they're kind of those community courses where people would be learning real estate. But I agree with you, Nick, that it should be taught in the school system and not necessarily in these kind of like special things that either the churches or some of the organizations were doing. So it needs to be taught in a more consistent basis. I'm not
sure. That algebra course really helped me out with my mortgage, didn't it? That algebra course really helped me out with the mortgage. More, the geometry course really helped me out in my car loan. Like they force that garbage down your throat, and they don't teach you anything about real estate and loans. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So we need to really revamp the U.S. education system if you want to get the U.S. on track. And this budget, which I keep bringing up, that should be in every high school in the United States, so they know what's going on. So who knows about this? Well, the elites do. That's the reason they moved to Washington, D.C., and they get big government contracts like Tesla, SpaceX. I mean, unbelievable. Billions of dollars, not millions, billions, Mark. So who's suffering? It's it's Pepper's clients. The small,
for sure, and everything along
the way. They figured it out. When they see her, they figured it out. But who suffers? The people that don't see her and get the government contracts.
That's true.
They got to get those government contracts and learn about things that she's got going on in that space with her company and everything. Because definitely that, I was surprised that you said that, because I've got friends that are living in DC and trying to make it in DC, some that are even apartment hunting and trying to get around that DC area. So I was surprised that you mentioned the real estate market being so good in DC, because everybody, the time I talk to some of my friends up there, they are complaining about the cost of living up there, as well as some of the homelessness that is going on in that area.
If you own the real estate. What she's saying, it's great if you own the real estate.
They need to go to a different area to purchase their home. Everyone's trying to be next to the Joneses, right? So again, but if you go out a little bit more, they'll find just a great home. Just move out just a little bit.
Say, find a little bit something that maybe not in that high rent district.
Right. They're looking at these overpriced homes. That's not for you. You need to go out a little bit more. Go to Maryland. Go a little further away. So yeah, that's, again, we're overspending, right?
Yep, definitely doing that. I don't know if Lee had any other questions. Otherwise, I'm going to ask you to give your contact information, as well as how you can be found there in the Virginia, D.C. area and all along those lines. And you've been a great guest, and hopefully we'll have you come back on in the not too distant future as well. But Lee, did you have any other final thoughts, or Nick? Otherwise, we'll get her information and get ready to get on out of here.
I'm good, Mark. Thank you. It's kind of on the late side, so let me listen to Pepper close out the show today.
Contact information.
Yes. Give us your contact information.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Pepper Bethel. I'm with the TPI Group. We're in Tysons Corner, Virginia. Our website is www.tpigroupinc.com, or you can reach us by phone at 703-288-1998.
Sounds good. Sounds like an easy number to remember, and all along those lines. So hopefully folks will be reaching out to you. We're going to get out of here. I think we might have another guest in another lane on tomorrow. And of course, we'll be dealing with some of the other things going on, including some of the things that Shaquille mentioned around what's going on in politics there in DC and all along those lines, and everything in that kind of way. So you're ready to get on out of here and everything. Pepper, as we're heading out the door, since we started off with politics and everything, I'm going to actually tease you. Do you have any advice for those lovely politicians? Because they do seem like they're playing like they're the old kids in the Sandlot and all in that kind of way. So do you have any advice as we head out the door for those lovely politicians there in DC that I'm sure are maybe even some of the folks that you see on a regular basis?
Well, I'm just going to end the show with saying that we just got to give love to receive love. So what I'd like to do is just give love to everyone, and hopefully that, we're all of the same mind, is that we're all human, mankind, and we should all just be kind to one another.
Agree with you on that. That's definitely something that is a positive message, and one that I hope people hear, not just there in the political landscape, but in the world landscape as well. So we're going to get on out of here, and we've got Modern Investment coming up at 1:00. But Pepper, you are a great guest, and look forward to hopefully having you come back on in the not too distant future.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem.